Dear students, today we will talk about aquaculture, the propagation and husbandry of aquatic plants, animals and other organisms for commercial, recreational and scientific purposes. Aquaculture is an approximate aquatic equivalent to agriculture, that is, the rearing of certain marine and freshwater organisms to supplement the natural supply. This includes production for supplying other aquaculture operations, for providing food and industrial products, for stocking sport fisheries, for supplying aquatic bait animals, for stocking fee fishing operations, for providing aquatic organisms for ornamental purposes, and for supplying feedstocks to the pharmaceutical and chemical industries. These activities can occur worldwide. Aquaculture has been in existence since at least 500 BC. However, only since the mid-20th century, it has assumed commercial importance. The rapid expansion of aquaculture has been to a large extent in the production of relatively high-priced species, frequently consumed as a fresh product. Examples are shrimp, crayfish, prawns, trout, salmon fish and oysters. However, also increasing is the production of catfish, carp and tilapia, which are reared in extensive low energy systems. For example, catfish farming in the United States has more than 5 times its production since it began to grow in the 1960s. Some of these freshwater fish are also utilized in aquaponics, a hybrid system that combines aquaculture with the hydroponic cultivation of plants. The fish wastes are used to feed the plants. Ocean ranching by governments is intended to restock lakes and oceans. The young fish are bred in the controlled environment and when sufficiently mature are released into the open sea. Oysters, as a source of both food and pearls, scallops and mussels are raised throughout most of the world. Carp, trout, catfish and tilapia are also widely raised. Experiments with ocean ranching in the late 20th century led to the economically successful aquaculture of lobsters. The growth of world aquaculture has been stimulated by a number of factors, including population increases, dietary shifts and advances in aquaculture technology. Limits to the natural supply of ocean resources have also encouraged a growing role for aquaculture in helping to meet increasing demands for fish and shellfish. Fish farming. Fish farming, as originally practiced, involved capturing immature specimens and then raising them under optimal conditions, in which they were well fed and protected from predators and competitors for light and space. It was not until 1733, however, that a German farmer successfully raised fish from eggs that he had artificially obtained and fertilized. Male and female trout were collected when ready for spawning. Eggs and sperm were pressed from their bodies and mixed together under favorable conditions. After the eggs hatched, the fish fry were taken to tanks or ponds for further cultivation. Methods have also been developed for artificial breeding of saltwater fish, and it now appears possible not only to rear sea animals but also to have the complete life cycle under hatchery control. Farm fish can be kept both in natural waters such as in barricaded coastal waters or in cages that are suspended in open water and in artificial aquatic impoundments, including earth ponds, tanks or concrete pools. In these enclosures, the animals can be supplied with adequate food and protected from many natural predators. The most economically important species are carp, trout, salmon and tilapia. Many other fish are raised artificially by various methods. Among these are sturgeon, milkfish, mullet, striped bass, redfish, sea bass and catfish. Let's start with the carp. Carp raising practiced worldwide is a good example of advanced techniques. For the whole life cycle, at least 3 different types of ponds are used in Europe. Special, shallow and warm ponds with rich vegetation. They provide a good environment for spawning, a process that is today often aided by hormone injections. After spawning, the parent fish are separated from the eggs and taken to a second pond. The fry, which hatch after a few days, are transported to shallow plankton rich nursing ponds, where they remain until the fall of the year or the next spring. In tropical areas such as India, carp spawned from wild fish can be collected by experts in natural waters. Collect eggs or fry from wild fish is disadvantageous, however, because the breeder cannot influence the breeding stocks in a desired direction. And in Asia, the fry of common or golden carp are thus generally bred under culture condition in hatcheries. Bigger ponds are needed for rearing the fish in the second year of life. There are large carp ponds in certain areas of Central Europe, while in Asia, common carp are often cultivated in rice fields, a practice called wetland cultivation. This method is increasingly endangered by sprays used to control pests and disease and by toxic agents resulting from industrial development. For feeding carp in ponds, soybean meal, rice bran and similar agricultural products are used. Concentrated food in the form of pellets has also been successfully introduced. During the winter season in the temperate zone, the carp are kept in deeper ponds with a dependable flow of water to protect them against freezing. In Central Europe, carp are ready for market after the third summer. In Southern Europe, Hungary and parts of the Balkan Peninsula, carp may be sold after the second summer. In tropical areas, the fish grows faster. To accelerate growth, warm water ponds now exist in the temperate zone, where an average harvest of 400 to 500 kg per hectare is normal in intensive cultivation. By scientific management and careful selection, it is possible to obtain yields up to 3500 kg per hectare for carp in warm water ponds. The ornamental carp, koi, it is a domesticated breed of the common carp. It is raised and bred similarly to carp raised for food. Again, we have trout and salmon. Although trout was the first fish to be artificially fertilized, trout and salmon cultivation in Europe and North America is much younger than the carp cultivation. Trout are cold water fish and must have a constant supply of sufficient oxygen, making cultivation more difficult. Though trout ponds can be smaller than carp ponds, good year-round water circulation is essential. Trout farms are therefore often located in mountainous areas where plentiful pure water is available. The young fish are obtained exclusively by artificial fertilization. Thus, hatchery buildings with low temperature water and good filters are the center of this type of pond fishery. There, the eggs are kept under control during breeding in special small tanks. As soon as the hatched fry can swim and eat on their own, they are transplanted to rearing ponds for feeding. Trout are carnivores. Meat packing byproducts are used for feed. Such food may be released into the ponds at predetermined intervals by automatic dispensers, though many authorities claim that trout should have as much natural foodstuff as possible and therefore should be raised in natural ponds only. In many countries, rearing is done in concrete lined ponds or concrete tanks, which are easy to keep clean and permit disinfectant application. The time necessary to rear fish and the yield per hectare depends on feeding. Trout are important sport fishes and are often raised in hatcheries for later transfer to habitable bodies of water. Some trout farms sell their fish not only fresh and frozen but also smoked and filleted. For trout and salmon, a new system of fish cultivation has been introduced. Instead of ponds, enclosures of netting or other material are placed in natural waters such as lakes for trout and also in brackish waters or the coastal ocean for salmon. By this means, areas formerly of low value can be farmed intensively. Salmon production occurs in 3-year cycles. The first year is similar to that of the young trout and occurs in controlled freshwater environments. The salmon are then transported to seawater cages for the rest of the cycle. Since the period preceding World War II, trout and salmon farming in seawater has grown tremendously. By the first quarter of the 21st century, about 60% of all salmon production worldwide was from farmed fish. Most commercial salmon farming occurs in Chile, Norway, Canada, Scotland, Australia, New Zealand, Iceland, Ireland, and the Faroe Islands. In areas where the cold waters have a protective shoreline, although it is clearly productive and cost efficient, farming fish such as salmon and trout in natural areas has a number of environmental disadvantages. Like any form of animal agriculture, fish farming generates large amounts of concentrated waste, a form of water pollution in natural environments without strong currents to help dissipate it. This waste accumulates and can harm marine life and trigger toxic algal blooms. The high density of fish housed together in pens can lead to fish lice infestations, which cause high mortality for the farmed animals and spread readily to wild fish. While some farm fish are fed chicken and grain products, which has been criticized for unnatural for aquatic animals, others are fed products derived from wild caught fish. In 2021, a biotech company named Aqua Bounty harvested its first genetically modified salmon at an indoor aquaculture farm in Albany, Indiana. Such fish grow twice as fast as wild salmon, reaching market size in 18 months rather than 36, and are promoted as having a lower carbon footprint than traditionally farmed salmon. In addition to receiving the standard criticisms leveled at other GMO foods, genetically modified salmon have been denounced because if they escaped pens in Pacific waters, they might breed and compete with wild salmon, which could harm indigenous communities that rely on wild salmon. Tilapia. The use of tilapia in warm water aquaculture systems dates back to early Egyptian civilization. The fish are perhaps best known because of their potential as an easily raised and harvested food fish. They can be grown in a variety of environments ranging from ponds to tanks and are suitable for small scale endeavors. Their commercial advantages include fast growth, resistance to disease, and a diet of readily available algae and zooplankton. The most widely cultured species is the Nile tilapia, Oreochromis niloticus. So let's discuss some other types of aquaculture. We have mollusks. Other important subjects of cultivation in many parts of the world are mollusks, though few water snails are cultivated. Bivalves, especially oysters, are quite important in Asia, Europe, and North America. For centuries, the French have cultivated oysters by placing twigs in the sea to which free swimming oyster larvae attach. In Northern Europe, oysters have been cultivated on the ocean bottom, but low winter temperatures limit the extent of this activity. In the Mediterranean, the Romans are said to have been the first to farm oysters. Today, oysters are cultivated on the Pacific coast of North America as well as on the southern Atlantic coast and in the Gulf of Mexico. Australia, the Philippines, and South Africa also possess oyster farms. And the Japanese grow edible oysters from Hokkaido, that is in the north, to Kyushu in the south. Japanese farms are divided into two classes. Some cultivate seed oysters only, while others raise the bivalves for food, especially for export. The Japanese cultivated oysters on the sea bottom, that's horizontally, and on sticks, that's vertically, to collect the larvae which affix themselves to any firm object such as an old shell or a stone. Aquaculturists place various devices in the water. These may be bamboo sticks with shells attached or a rope with shells hanging from it. Limed tiles and wooden plates have been used for the same purpose in Europe. Production is greatest in places with good shelter against rough seas and tidal current to carry food to the larvae, adequate salinity and optimum temperature. After some growing time, the larvae are loosened and transported to other areas for maturation under the best conditions. While growing to marketable size, the oysters must be protected against predators such as sea stars and oyster drillers. As sea star damage cannot be completely avoided when growing oysters on the bottom, a vertical system of culture is preferred in many areas. Oysters grow vertically, hang in clusters or in baskets, or are fixed on poles in sheltered bays. In an alternative system, oysters are grown on horizontal trays kept some distance from the bottom. Though tray raised oysters are expensive, they generally survive better than oysters reared directly on the bottom. Blue mussels. Blue mussels are cultivated in Italy, Spain, France, the Netherlands, and near Germany in the North Sea and the Baltic. There are well horizontal bottom methods have been replaced by vertical culture. Originally, the young mussels collected from wild stocks were spread or controlled banks leased from the government. The mussel's capacity to grow in very extensive and dense beds is highly advantageous. Before full grown mussels are sent in sacks to market, special purification methods are employed to wash out sand. Today, vertical culture is practiced with sticks pushed into the ocean bottom or with lines hanging from rafts. Unfortunately, line cultures may be damaged in winters. Thus, experiments have been made with polyethylene net bags and endless tubes of polypropylene netting. The bags must be strong enough to carry the mussels until harvesting. Many other mollusks are cultivated, including soft clams and scallops. For these bivalves, the problem are roughly the same: collecting the larvae, raising the young under good conditions, protecting against the predators, harvesting the adults without injury, and sometimes cleaning for market. Among inedible bivalves, pearl oysters deserve mention. Pearl farming is one of the most famous industries of Japan, dating to 1893 when a Japanese first succeeded in cultivating pearls. Under the skin of an oyster, the pearl farmer inserts a pearl nucleus as a small spherical shell fragment. It is wrapped in piece of living oyster tissue. The treated oyster is placed in a culture cage on a floating raft, and after some months or years, the cultured oyster produces a pearl. Japan's pearl production is still concentrated along the coast of Mie Prefecture, where it was developed. Crustaceans, mainly shrimps, crayfish, and prawns, are also cultivated. In traditional Japanese practice, immature shrimps are caught in coastal waters and transferred to ponds. Today, most in the United States and Japan, shrimps are cultivated by catching adult egg-bearing females. The presence of eggs can be detected by examining the ovaries, usually visible through the shell. The female shrimps are transferred to large seawater ponds that are adjacent to the sea otter tanks. After hatching, the shrimps are fed in indoor tanks with cultivated plankton. After 10 days, they are brought to shallow ponds for further cultivation or for distribution to other farms. Commercial lobster culture is feasible but is usually not economical. The animals take 2 to 3 years to reach market size, and they have a high mortality rate. Lobsters must molt in order to grow and are quite vulnerable during the molting period. Seaweeds. Another important item in aquaculture is seaweed, laver, Ornori porphyra species. It is a traditional part of the Japanese diet and is one of the most commonly farmed species. The Japanese first cultivated this algae in the late 17th century in the brackish water of Tokyo Bay. Originally, a vertical method was used in which bushes were placed in the water. A horizontal method is now employed Large meshed netting made of rough materials is hung horizontally between poles at the proper depth. The algae grow there by themselves and the owners harvest them from the nets by hand. Harvesting begins early in November and continues until about March. After the season is over, the gear is removed and stored. Part-time fishers and land farmers often engage in such algae culture. Other farmed seaweeds include other red algae such as Alcohoron sea moss, that is Capophycus alrisi, and various Euchema and Pyropia species, and a number of large brown algae including kombu, that is Saccharina japonica, Hitchki, Sargassum fusiform, and Vacame, that is Undaria pinnatifida. These and other farmed algae are used for food and in industry. Lastly, we will discuss about the environmental impact of aquaculture and biofloc technology. Given that the expansion of the aquaculture industry is associated with increased environmental impact and its strong dependence on the fish meal in the diet, the use of biofloc technology can reduce these problems. This technology absorbs inorganic nitrogen from aquaculture, wastewater, and improves water quality as well as produces microbial protein that is directly used as suitable feed supplement for aquatic animals. Furthermore, this technology reduces the feed conversion ratio and subsequent production cost. Biofloc is available to aquatic animals throughout the day and provides the necessary nutrients, fatty acids, and minerals. Biofloc, along with formulated diets, provides a complete food chain for aquatic animals' growth and thus improves growth performance. Since feed constitutes a major part of the aquaculture cost, having accurate information about biofloc system in aquatic animals' nutrition can be beneficial and helpful. Compared to traditional aquaculture techniques, biofloc technology provides a more sustainable approach with minimal water exchange along with reduced feed intake and transforms it into a low-cost sustainable technology for sustainable aquaculture development. Overall, this technology highlights the significance of developing biofloc technology to improve aquaculture production and could be an alternative system for cultivation of important commercial species in aquaculture. That's all for today. Thank you.